Hello and welcome to our Stand for Something community conversation. My name is Margaret Edwardowski and I'm the Executive Director of Y Arts for the YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit, and I will be your host today for this wonderful community conversation that is brought to you by the DIG committee at the Y. This is the Diversity, Inclusion, Equity, and Global Committee who brings initiatives to help bring understanding and acceptance and to help the Y to serve all in the community. We have a fantastic today to talk in support of the LGBTQ plus community. And of course, this is in honor of Pride. And we're very, very excited to be able to talk to these great community members today. Today's date, or the date of this event, was chosen strategically because today is, of course, the anniversary of Stonewall. Now, as we know, as perspectives change, nomenclature changes as well. Stonewall was often known as the Stonewall Riots, but as we look at it from a new angle, we'll refer to it as the Stonewall Uprising. If you're unfamiliar with it, they were a series of spontaneous demonstrations by members of the gay community in response to a police raid that began in the early morning hours of June 28, 1969 at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village, New York. So patrons of Stonewall and other Greenwich Village lesbian and gay bars and neighborhood street people fought back when the police became violent. The uprising is widely considered to constitute one of the most important events leading to the 20th century fight for LGBTQ plus rights in the United States. So of course we thought this was a very important day to have this great conversation. So let's start off by bringing on our panel. Like I said, we've assembled some pretty amazing people to talk to today. So we'll bring them onto the screen and then we'll go around and as I say your name, just wave so everyone knows who you are. I don't know, our names may be on the screen or not, I don't know. So Adrian Haslam is the founder of Pride and Joy. It's a community group for parents and guardians of LGBTQIA plus youth in Novi. Thrilled to have her here. Hi, Adrian.
Hello, good morning, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Very excited to have with us Dave Garcia, Flint ACLU Civil Libertarian of the Year and award-winning documentarian and playwright. He's the executive director of Affirmations, and a member of Centerlink, the National LGBTQ plus Community Centers Network Board of Directors, and about a million other things. And he also has a long history with the Y, which is why we're doubly excited that he's here. So hi, Dave, how are you?
Hi, good morning, happy Pride.
Happy Pride. Santiago Moreno is with us as well. We're excited about that. He's an active an activist for trans, non-binary, and intersex people, Mexican and Filipino background, and was born and raised in Michigan. He appears in the film A Year in Transition and From Here On Out, the documentary, and has written for Between the Lines. Recently, he created an apparel brand to help promote motivation, suicide prevention, and encourage people to never give up. Hi, Santiago. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you.
Happy Pride. I'm gonna continue Dave's well wishes for Pride. Gwinnett Harris is part of our YMCA family. She's the youth and program coordinator for the Ann Arbor YMCA and serves as the chair of the multicultural ERG employee resource group, working to ensure that the Y is
recording has stopped.
For all. So hello, Gwinnett.
Good morning, happy Pride.
Happy Pride to you. And last but certainly not least, and then we'll get to one more very special guest we have, is Lynn Orlowski, a Metro Detroit 25-year benefits consulting professional and South Oakland Family YMCA board member, currently employed at Oswald Companies. Lynn is committed to diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Hi, Lynn.
Hey, Margaret. Thanks for having me. Happy Pride.
Thanks for being here. Happy Pride. Love the shirt. And then our very special guest to help us kick everything off is our wonderful CEO, Helene Weir. I she's the woman in charge. I'll let her take the reins to get us started. And thank you so much for being here, Helene. Happy Pride to you.
Thank you, Margaret. And it's so great to see all of you and to be having this opportunity. This is only the second panel, Stand for Something panel that RY has done. And the work of our DIG committee is amazing. Really, the challenges during the pandemic and all the social issues that came out of the pandemic and the George Floyd murder really have energized the staff of our YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit. And I'm so proud of our team that is really taking this to heart and really trying to have our Y really be conscious of diversity, inclusion, equity, and global. So this is exciting. I can't wait to hear the conversation with the panel. Our YMCA is a center of community, and it's important as a center of community that we are a safe space for all. And that will disturb some people. Some people won't be supportive of that, but that is what we stand for, and that is what we're going to do. And I'm just so excited that we've gotten staff and volunteers interested in this work, and it's really going to be part of the fabric of our YMCA as we go forward. So enough from me. Can't wait to hear the conversation. Thanks for being here. Happy Pride, and carry on, Margaret, our wonderful host.
Thank you so much, Helene. I have to say that Helene has been a big driving force in our work for the DIG committee, which I am very pleased to be a part of, and for our work toward a more inclusive Y. So we're very thankful for you, Helene, for prioritizing that.
Thank you. Now.
Thank you. So with Happy Pride in mind, and because we're going to go over a variety of topics, some of which are heavier than others, let's start on a light note. It's a combo question. First off, what are some great ways you know of for the community to celebrate Pride? This is, like I said, we're trying to inform the community of the resources and ways to understand and support. And also, if you have any ways you specifically are celebrating Pride, we would love to hear about that as well. So let's start off with Dave. Why don't you tell us either what can people do to celebrate Pride or anything that you might be doing?
Well, because of COVID, a lot of the Pride festivals have been moved. So for example, Ferndale Pride, which is typically in July, has been moved to the fall. I encourage you to still come to that. It's going to be a great time. Same thing with Motor City Pride, which has been moved till the fall. So a lot of those type of things are happening, but things are starting to open up more and more. We had a telethon at Affirmations this Saturday. We had a lot of people in and out of the building. Affirmations will be opening again for good August 1st. So I think things are starting, unless the virus has other ideas, to get back to some semblance of normalcy. I'm sure you're seeing that with your YMCA camps as well. I was just up at Camp Oesa, and that you guys are having a full season there. So there are opportunities all over the state. Yesterday, Rochester, of all places, had a Pride celebration. There's Prides in the parks. So there's a lot of ways to get involved. And I want to thank you for taking the time out to mention Stonewall, by the way, and how important today is. It's also important to remember that the trans community really played a leadership role in the Stonewall Rebellion. And I don't want that to get lost in our conversation, nor do I want the Black Cat Lounge in Los Angeles, which actually happened a year before Stonewall. So there was something in the air. And I just want to make sure to mention those two things. There's plenty of opportunities to get involved. If you need more information, reach out to Affirmations, or any number of folks here can also get you involved in other ways.
Fantastic, thank you. And thank you for that extra context of, historically, what was going on. Lynn, how are you celebrating, or what do you recommend to celebrate?
Yeah, I think unfortunately with everything that did happen with COVID and the delay of Pride, there have been a few establishments that will have a happy hour or Pride or what have you. But really what I've been doing is celebrating with my friends. I mean, we've come a long, long way. If you think back to, when I maybe probably celebrated my first Pride 19 years ago, when I felt comfortable to do so. It used to be, you'd go to one bar, maybe go to Como's or somewhere on 9 Mile and check things out. But today you can't go anywhere, whether it's going to Target or Kohl's or what have you. It seems so much more, I don't want to use the word mainstream, but I think acceptance and just different things for the month of June are really exposed, and you know, it's just showing that we're part of the community and we need, you know, we're recognized as such.
I'm very excited when I see that, like you said, in places you don't expect it. I was playing an app game and it had a little rainbow added to it in the update. I'm like, yes. Santiago, do you have anything to share as far as celebrating Pride?
Yeah, I guess I would like to actually touch base on what Dave said too, because that was the first thing that came to my mind. When for me, I'm very much more about the education aspect of things, and I want people to understand why Pride was started and who started it. You know, it was a Black trans woman that started Stonewall, and I think a lot of times people forget that. And especially as a trans person, I run into a lot of complications and discussions with other people within the community that sort of sometimes outcast us, but they don't realize that we're really the basis of what started a lot of those. I know you don't want to call them riots anymore, but that is, you know, what they were. And I think just as a whole, we need to remember what Pride was really about. And lately, I've been seeing a lot of controversy on like what's allowed at Pride, what's not allowed at Pride, what should be included, what should be banned. And it's just like, I understand we're progressing, but let's still not forget that history and what it really meant, you know, and why it was started. So I think for me, especially with COVID, the best thing I want people to do is just educate themselves on the whole event in itself and the whole movement. So
That is an excellent point. There was so much discussion up to this month about what does it mean to you? What should you be allowed to do during your celebration of Pride? And I think that speaks so much to what a diverse group the LGBTQ plus community is in and of itself, right? That everybody's idea of how to celebrate or commemorate is different, and everybody's idea, you know, not everyone might be familiar with who some of the people who sparked this whole movement really were. So that's a great point. Adrienne, anything to share on this celebration of Pride topic?
Yeah, maybe even just to tag on to what Santiago said, and Dave too, with the education. I think it's really important not to get caught up in seeing all the rainbows and parades and thinking like, you know, we're looking past, you know, into the history to say we've made it so far and everything is great now, because the struggle is very much ongoing. It's continuing today. This year alone, I think there are more anti-trans bills being, you know, put through than there have been in so many years past. A lot of kids still, you know, living in homes that are not affirming of them, and a lot of people closeted, a lot of people in conversion therapy. That's still legal in many states and in many communities that's happening. So I think the education part is really critical. I love seeing all the streaming, you know, Netflix and Hulu, everyone's got sort of their Pride lineup. So there's a lot of content out there that makes it very easy for those of us who are still at home to watch some shows and get more educated. Those can be great conversation starters too within our homes with our family members and our kids. And I think making sure that our kids know that we're safe people who are always learning and open to understanding other people's perspectives better and respecting them is a great message to send to our kids.
A great point, the always learning part. And I think that's something we really push from the DIG committee is we're going to make mistakes along the way, but to be open to hearing and understanding and learning, that's where it's going to make a difference for everybody. So thank you for that. Last but not least, Lynette, anything to share about celebrating Pride?
Yes, the Ann Arbor Y, we're going to be hosting a watch party. Ann Arbor Pride will be virtual this year. So our YMCA on Saturday, August 7th, will be hosting a watch party at our YMCA. And just like everybody else has been saying, education, there's signage throughout our building about what Pride Month is, what it's, you know, how it started, what it's all about. We had a virtual workshop called a Pride Paint event where we recreated a painting with Pride colors. So just different things, wall displays, and given history of some leaders and organizers of the LGBTQ movement. So those are some of the ways we celebrate it.
Fantastic. It's great that your Y is offering resources to the community. This is our initial opportunity to do that through the Detroit YMCA's, but then also I know recently we've gotten involved with Pride just before the pandemic, and hope to do more of that as we go along. When you are the gathering place for community, it's really great to have the opportunity to connect people with the type of stuff you're talking about. So let's move on to a new topic. And I think moving forward, I may just, rather than calling on individually, we'll let people chime in, and I'll help facilitate, the transition between that. So let's talk about religious exemptions. This is a difficult subject, and has been something very much in the news, and in the courts, and in everyday life, unfortunately, for some people. So as allies, those of us in the community who want to be allies, how do we respond to people who object to or want to limit the LGBTQ community because of their religious views? What can we do to better support the community? I don't know if that's a difficult first question out after, how do you celebrate Pride? All right, how do we solve the religious exemption issue? But, any thoughts? And it doesn't even have to be on that, like any thoughts on the religious exemption issue at all? Yeah, Adrienne, go ahead.
Yeah, I could just say that, I do understand a lot of that, the concern. I grew up in a community that was not tolerant or accepting of LGBTQ identities. So I understand where that's coming from for some people. And I think it's really just important to get down for whatever faith background someone might have, that's driving these fears. I do think they're fears, is just to remember the tenets of the faith. I think for most people, it's love. And when you think about love of neighbor, how does that get lived out? Do you think that, the higher power would be more upset with you for allowing someone to have the same rights that you have, or to just show the love that your faith stands for, and look at the values that, you say you subscribe to? How do you show your love to someone else, and let God be God, let the judge be the judge, and you just love?
That's great. Thank you.
I think that people
Yeah,
have a misunderstanding too of how important this issue is, and they think that it is all about wedding cakes and wedding photographers, and that is simply not the case. We have a doctor right here in Detroit just a couple of years ago a pediatrician refusing to treat a baby because that baby's parents were lesbians, and we are seeing, and not suffering any repercussions because they hide behind the religious exemption. They say it's their religious right to do this. We're seeing that in primary care and mental health care all over the country. This is not just about wedding cakes. Now, look, I'm not gonna bash religion. We did just have folks with their God hates fag signs right outside of affirmations just a couple weeks ago. At the same time, we are welcoming in a progressive denomination to affirmations for their Sunday services. So I think there is a historical text here as well. We have to recognize what the role of the conservative Christian church has had since slavery and justifying slavery with biblical text, women's right to vote, Black and white marriage, interracial marriage, and then today they're using the same tactics today. But some of the most progressive churches have also been on our side on every issue that I just mentioned as well. So this is just 2021 in today's battle, but we see it every day at affirmations. Every single leader in the LGBTQ community just received a threatening letter, some sent to our homes, condemning us to hell, condemning us to a lifetime of anguish and agony. And so this is an issue that we deal with every single day, but this is not simply about wedding cakes. And even if it was about wedding cakes or wedding photographers, let's not pretend that our tax dollars aren't going to the police that protect that business, or the firefighters, or the Wi-Fi, or the sidewalks out front. And so I have no problem defending anyone's right to believe whatever they want to. but they've got to keep it out of the public square and out of public policy.
Thank you very much for that. I think you make a great point, because obviously we don't want to broad brush and say, you know, the religious community is some sort of enemy. I think, like you said, I know when I drive down Woodward, I can't remember the name of the church, but there's a giant pride banner on one of the churches in Ferndale in support. So
yes, the Unitarians, the Episcopalians, the Quakers, the United Methodists, the list goes on of progressive Christian denominations that do not adhere to religious discrimination and truly believe in equality, fairness, and protection for all people.
anyone else have any thoughts on the religious exemption? Yeah, Lynette.
Oh, go ahead, Lynn.
What's that? Go ahead, Lynette.
Oh, okay. I was going to point out how at our YMCA, we changed our mission statement. You know, at first it talked about, you know, we're putting our Christian principles into practice, but now it's been changed to, you know, to a more inclusive statement, saying that we're putting our core values into practice of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility. And it's like right when you come in our door, that's the first thing you see is our mission statement, just showing that, you know, our why is for all, you know, and, you know, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes people worry about the C in YMCA if their experience hasn't been extremely positive. And similar to you, this year or last, we added inclusion to those core values for Detroit. So that to make that statement to the community. Lynn, you had something you wanted to chime in with?
No, I was going to add on to what David had mentioned, that is physicians have hidden behind religious reasons to not treat members of our community. And, you know, we can address it down the way in this conversation, but that there's enough hurdles out there for someone. Some people are even just afraid to go to the doctor, and then to have that happen is really a problem if they're turned away. It's a serious issue, you know, with a lot of medical concerns that are out there. For someone to use that as an excuse just seems unacceptable today. There's so many people doing so many things wrong, but yet if you slap a religious tag on them, they can get away with different things. That's where I have a problem.
I think you've made a great segue opportunity for us to move into those healthcare disparities. So this is sort of this legal discrimination in access to health insurance, employment, housing, marriage, adoption, retirement benefits. So Lynn, I know you have a lot of expertise in this area. Would you like to kick us off in talking about healthcare disparities in the community?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we've come a long way in regards to, you know, we talked about the Supreme Court decision for marriage, and that allowed, you know, people who could get married not to worry about their company having a domestic partner rider or not, and not being able to get care for somebody or someone that they've lived with for 25 years or what have you. But there's a lot of things that go into these healthcare disparities. You know, employees in general, if they don't feel acceptance and, you know, with the diversity and inclusion, if their company is not making them feel welcome in general, that just is aware on their mental health. So that's, you know, there's a lot of time spent with some people in our community hiding who they are because they're not accepted. And so that just triggers a lot of different things. They can, you know, many of us have felt, I personally have a great primary care doctor, and I am completely open, but I'm very thankful for that. And that was purposeful when I chose that physician. And so I can go and get done anything that I need, but there are other people who, you know, are missing out on opportunities for screenings, mental health issues. I think David was going to talk about smoking a little bit, and, you know, just suicide issues in general that are just being avoided because people don't feel safe getting the care.
Thank you. Yeah, the fear of how you'll be received or what treatment you'll get is just kind of the worst of it. But people might not seek out treatment that they need, and then their situation will get worse. Does anyone else want to chime in on this one while we're here?
Yeah, actually, I would like to say something about it. I think too, and I go back to the education aspect, for the trans community, a lot of times we are turned away. I don't know, it goes back to even the religious topic. It goes back to the lack of education. One thing I really noticed when I was going through prereqs for nursing school is there's no curriculum on trans healthcare. I had to go, I was a volunteer doing HIV testing and counseling. I had to go to a specific seminar just for trans healthcare, just for testing and counseling. But within curriculum in the nursing field and even the medical field, there's nothing that talks about trans healthcare or intersex healthcare or anything on that. So I think it really goes back to the roots of education. I think our healthcare in general has a lot of work to do, but I think it starts back on the education basis in schools and like seminars and training and including those people that way, like Lynn said, there's no unfamiliarity with it. There's no uncertainty. There's no awkward uncomfortableness. When I first transitioned, I had to call around to over 10 clinics just to get someone that would see me because most of them either didn't agree with it or they just didn't know how to treat it. And it was like, I think it just starts with the education from the very, very beginning.
And to Santiago's point, we certainly have a role to play in that. PrEP is a drug that a pill that young people, anybody can take every day, and it's 99+% effective against the HIV virus. So when someone has an HIV test and they test negative, oftentimes it's kind of, oh, cool, I'll see you in 6 months. And nobody's following up with that person, especially young people and young gay men in the Latino community, my own Latino community, or the African-American community where the HIV virus is still growing. Are they being educated on something like PrEP? Not just them. I have doctors who ask me what PrEP is, and they're the doctor. So to Santiago's point, there's a lot of education that needs to take place, especially in healthcare.
Do you mind if I bounce off that again too?
Please.
I think even with that said, and also is, again, for even trans communities, it's one thing for them to be educated about PrEP in general or this community. I can honestly say from my personal experience, when Descovy came out, another form of PrEP, they hadn't even done studies for trans men or even cis women. So they completely just forgot about a whole community of people. And it was a little frustrating because sometimes I feel like we're so overlooked that a lot of times our care is just, no one thinks about it because they didn't even think maybe that we existed in the first place.
Excellent points. When there's no precedent or education or anything put in place of here's what you do in a situation, people are going to default to trying to figure out what they think is right, and that may be colored by opinion or biases, and then people are hurt by that. So definitely education. How do we support improvement in this arena? Does anybody know? Is there something we can get behind to help this educational process? Lynn, I think you were about to say something.
No, I was just going to add that I do see adjustments. It's at a bigger carrier level maybe versus say on the individual level. But when I refer to carriers, I'm talking about the Blue Cross Blue Shields, the Priority Health that are out there. And they're trying to help educate the physician population that, is their network by teaching, talking about unconscious bias education, providing the different topics via, webinars like this to try and support it. But again, that's a pretty wide, vast area to try and accommodate. And I think Santiago covered. I mean, it's not just, okay, here's the alphabet of LGBT. There's a lot of different nuances within it that really need to be represented. And so we've talked about this a ton today, education, how we got here and what we're doing. That's just something that needs to be continued and constantly put aside or put forward. And I do see some of my partners, the carrier partners, doing that, which is, again, something 2 years ago I didn't see, and certainly not anything before that. So it may be slow to get to where we need to, but there are some efforts out there.
It's great to know that there's movement. Let's just hope for more, right? 1 second, Adrian, we will get to your comment. One thing I forgot to mention is if you are watching us live, you can put some questions into the chat. If you have something you really want to know from our panel, please do feel free. And then our in-house production team will share the questions with me. I'm looking at them. They're not looking at me. Adrian, you wanted to tack onto that.
Yeah, since you asked, what can we do? I'm learning too, and I'm really appreciating hearing all this information about what's going on in healthcare. I just think as, a regular person, most of us are just regular people that maybe don't have immediate access to power to make big change or to know exactly what to do, but just to think about what can I do in my space, and like look at where your resources are, like where do you work, who are you connected to, who do you know. The more that we attend things like this and hear something, and it creates some empathy and some awareness, and we say, oh, that's a problem, actually think about what can you do. It might not be a huge thing that you can go join necessarily that you know of, but look at what you could do today to change something. If you go to the doctor today, maybe you can look at the forms and see, how gender inclusive are they? Can you ask your doctor a question to get some things prompted? I know someone who works in HR who recently was able to get gender confirmation surgery covered by the company after hearing about stuff like this. And, some people have that direct access, and some of us are just, have small access, but we can all do something.
Great point. Just in thinking of like being at your own doctor or that kind of thing, like just trying to have these conversations in the places where, you can make some kind of impact. That's great. So I want to move on to the topic of bullying. Now, being a youth serving organization, obviously, the idea of trying to create safe spaces for youth and freedom from bullying is important to us at the YMCA. But obviously, this is a topic that is, of specific concern within the LGBTQ plus community as well. So how do we ensure that we have community spaces that are safe from bullying? And, youth or adults, really, how do we have safe spaces, but specifically for youth, how do we make that happen? Does anybody want to chime in on that?
Well, you certainly can't be afraid to confront it when you see it, especially us as adults. People ask me all the time about being an ally to the community, and I bring up bullying because if we all think about a time when we were in elementary school or in middle school that you were being bullied, what hurt worse than the bully is sometimes when you looked around and your friends weren't doing anything to help you. That often hurt worse. And then that one guy or girl that did step in to have your back and to help fight back with you, man, you were friends with that person forever. That's what being an ally is kind of like. And so that doesn't really change from the playgrounds of our youth to the workplaces of our adulthood. And when you think about being an ally, that means you have our back. It is not enough to say you have a gay friend. That doesn't cut it, And it's to what Adrian was saying. If you are you supporting even one single nonprofit LGBT organization financially? And your giving portfolio, and we all typically have one. I give to Affirmations, of course, and to the HRC and to the ACLU and to climate, and is it, as a straight ally, is even one of your giving portfolio an LGBT nonprofit organization? I mean, that's a good way to be an ally as well. But to me, an ally is someone that's going to fight beside me, is going to stand shoulder to shoulder with me. And that's also how we confront bullying, in a sense, I think. So you gotta confront it. You can't be afraid of it. You can't be quiet and silent. You have to be the one that steps into the arena or the one that steps onto the playground to protect that kid that's being bullied.
and not fear awkwardness or taking the hits too, or whatever.
Right, metaphorically or not, exactly.
Yeah, it takes a certain amount of bravery, but unless you step up, nothing's going to change. Anyone else want to chime in on bullying or preventing bullying? Yeah, Lynette.
I was gonna discuss like in our child cares and day camps, like there's like zero tolerance for bullying, like just in general. And I also believe that the camps they take a lot of preventative measures prior to camp starting. Like I know the staff are trained on like gender. They're taught how to have discussions with the kids throughout the program, you know, about gender and stuff like that. So I haven't heard of a lot of bullying cases. You know, the most you hear is probably like a younger kid addressing an older one, like, oh, well, you saying you look, you know, you saying you're this, but you look like this. And that's just an opportunity for discussion to the employees. So, you know, they just try to take preventative measures. They ask the kids how they want to be addressed, you know, what pronouns they want us to use, what bathroom they want, you know, they're comfortable going into. So I feel like that's how we handle it.
That's great. And the Ann Arbor Y has a history of supporting safe spaces for LGBTQ. Dave, you were a part of that, right? Would you like to talk about the camp?
Sure, that was a long time ago.
A while ago.
Back in, you know,
They still deserve credit for.
They do. They were the first. The Ann Arbor YMCA, under Kathy Duchan's leadership, was the very first organization. It was the very first LGBTQ camp. The staff of the Ann Arbor YMCA, the counselors and myself, and partnered with the Ruth Ellis Center out of Detroit, and took those youth from the Ruth Ellis Center up to Camp Algonquin 2 years in a row over either Memorial Weekend or Labor Day weekend. I can't remember now. But that was the first of its kind in the state of Michigan. And it's a lot that Ann Arbor has to be proud of. And that was Kathy Duchan's leadership.
Thanks for sharing that. I didn't even know. Thank you.
Well, and if you think about the experience that those youth must have had to be in.
Oh man, most of those youth had never even left Detroit, and we took them up to the bridge, and we thought we were going to have all problems with, you know, that between who's going to sleep in what cabins and what have you, or the community up that far up north would have problems with LGBTQ kids. Now, what we really ran into is they had a problem with so many of those kids being Latino and Black. That's what they had a problem with on the streets up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that camp experience, and that is kind of magical. The sort of like, I've never made a s'more before, I've never been a campfire, I've never walked in the woods, but then on top of it, to be like, I've not been able to do these kinds of activities with youth that are like me, and where I don't fear, you know.
By the way, one of the best learning experiences that we had were our counselors out of Ann Arbor spending a night on Victor Street at the Ruth Ellis Center in the heart of Detroit. That was interesting for those counselors too, and to be in that neighborhood and to feel what those kids felt up in the woods. Now, that doesn't mean I still didn't scare the hell out of those kids with some camp stories, I got to tell you. But we had a great time up there, but we all learned, is my point. The counselors learned.
True cultural exchange. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Fantastic. Anyone else about safe spaces for youth? Yes, I was going to say, Adrienne, this is a.
Yeah. So, you know, I do run a parent group for parents of LGBTQIA plus kids in the Novi area. COVID certainly sort of interrupted what was a new group meeting in person. We've been doing it virtually once a month. And one thing that you were noticing as parents and allies in the group is that this generation of kids is in a really paradigm shifting place where they have representation and they have language for things that most of us adults still do not have daily access to. And, you know, unless you're on TikTok all day long, there's a lot that our kids know already and that they're seeing, and that I think they're really comfortable with and have a good understanding of, or at least are open to it, and, you know, having those conversations. And with that, then kids are coming out very young, and they're coming home and, maybe coming home and sharing this, but certainly with their friends and maybe at school, that they're identifying as something other than cisgender and other than straight. And it's really then on us adults to catch up. I think some of the bullying that happens isn't necessarily from kids to kids. I think, that the impact of bullying happens a lot of times from adults, maybe out of ignorance, maybe out of fear, which goes together. And kind of circling back to the education point, the education is what will eradicate the ignorance, which downstream will eradicate the fear, which leads to the bullying and violence. So I think the education is key, the representation is key, and just to remember that we adults very much have an impact in our words and our behavior, whether it's to an LGBTQ plus person or child, or to our, to straight kids who are the peers of those kids, and what tone are we setting in our homes? How are we respecting people? And for people who are leaders in groups of kids, just remembering that there's a lot of things that generationally we gender that don't need to be, and some things can be safer spaces just by putting away the boys and girls. But friends, hi friends, that's a very small easy way to welcome a group, or refer to scholars, your students, and looking at where are we dividing, who's allowed to like a certain toy, or who should wear a certain type of clothing. Those are the social constructs that we hear about when we hear gender is a social construct that can make a lot of people freak out. Like, no, there's boys and girls, but the gender is the the expression often of the things that typically are just defaulted as this is what boys like and this is what girls like. And as we know, we are rich individuals. We are not one thing. Just to have the freedom to like what we like, and for kids to like what they like and wear what they want, goes a very long way at making a safe space, in my opinion.
Excellent point. Excellent. And also a great lead into something I wanted to ask about that I was thinking in the car on the way here today. This pronouns thing, you guys, it's a real barrier for a lot of people, or is befuddling for people who have to make a change. And I find that conversation comes up a lot when there's somebody who's going to be reluctant to change. The pronoun thing really throws them through. Maybe generational, it may also be bias. Why is it such an important thing for us to adapt to people being able to identify by the pronouns that they feel best represent
them? I think it all comes just down to respect and comfortability and being included. I mean, when you mention that, I just think of all the goofy memes that I see. There are people like, well, you can start calling P. Diddy, but you can't call her she when she refers at her. My best comparison is, let's say someone gets married and they change their last name and they no longer want to refer to their maiden name as their last name. Everyone is so quick and okay to start referring to them as that new last name, because that's what they want. It's a respectful thing. It's what they've asked you to do. But the second someone says, I choose this pronoun, now everyone goes crazy and acts like it's the hardest thing in the world. So I think just acknowledging and respecting people's pronouns really can honestly, literally save a life. And I think that's what we need to realize is very important.
What a great point. I mean, how over time being misgendered or not having that understanding, what effect that can have long term on something. Anybody else want to chime in on pronouns? I'll be honest, from a personal perspective, and I will say I had a long period where I predominantly socialized within the LGBT community. That was my comfortable place, where most of my friends were. But still, and this may be my age, when that first came around, especially the they pronoun change was very difficult for me to understand. Until I knew someone who had transitioned And when stuff becomes personal, and then you take that journey with someone, you finally understand it's not just some pesky change that you're not ready for, some nomenclature that doesn't affect you. You see how it affects someone firsthand. So from my own personal experience, that made it different than, oh, this is work, right? Sometimes the change is like, it's work, I have to think about it, or it's not what I'm used to, it's not what I grew up with, so it's not right. So, you know, and as far as we're talking about helping our community members to better understand, this may be challenging for you, but it is a really important, I think, like Santiago said, a really important thing to adapt and be more understanding with, because it can affect the course of someone's whole life, right?
Margaret, I want to add that, you
Yeah.
know, especially for someone in Santiago may be able to address this better than I, but if somebody is finally able to go through with their transitioning, it's the least that we could do to respect what they, you know, have done to themselves, you know, gotten to where they need to be, and to call them the appropriate pronoun. So while I agree it isn't necessarily easy, even, you know, for me, it's a respect and, you know, appreciation of their bravery to be able to follow through.
And I would add too, especially because you work with so many young people, we are seeing so many young people at affirmations and really all over, you know, the Williams Institute just out of UCLA just did a study of how many young people are identifying as non-binary. And so the non-binary community is growing tremendously, and they don't want to identify as, you know, one gender or the other. And if it helps at all, you know, sometimes when you're driving down the expressway and someone cuts you off and you don't know who's in that car, you're like, what, you know, what the hell were they thinking? When you don't know, you often say they anyway. And so if you may not know, don't assume that you know a person's gender. And so, you know, maybe I loved Santiago's example. I don't, mine's not quite as good, but we already do it, I guess is what I'm saying. So yeah, it's a matter of respect. And I'm telling, especially when you're working with young people today, things are changing quickly.
I do want to add too that I feel like a lot of times people get very hung up on that in a negative way. You know, it's like, I don't know how to like articulate this thought, but it's almost like sometimes people who do have a preferred pronoun, a lot of times they may not voice that right away. And I think that causes sometimes awkward conversations, or, you know, the unknowing, you know. So then I just feel like sometimes in our community, we need to be more open-minded, that not everybody knows and not everybody completely understands, and not everyone is going to just know automatically by seeing you how you want to identify. And I think it's one reason why I'm so open and allowing people to ask questions, is because that's what breaks the stigmas, is asking questions and having conversations. And like you said, Margaret, being able to step into someone else's shoes and understand that, and understand on a personal level. And I think a lot of times it's kind of a rough grain on both aspects of it, you know, where some people that don't know, and then some people assume that you should just respect their pronouns had they not even told you yet, though. And I think sometimes we need to break that barrier of just, it's okay to discuss it, it's okay to make mistakes as long as they're not, you know, intentional and harmful. It's okay to ask questions, it's okay to confirm, you know, like just having those discussions.
It's okay to ask, how do you wish to identify?
Exactly.
That's a courteous question, isn't it? Right? But
Yeah.
you might be afraid to say it because you don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah, and we can always share ours first too. That's a very easy way to, you know, if you're introducing yourself to a group, or a lot of people are adding their pronouns to their email signatures. It's just, I think, becoming a more common part of our you know, communication to each other. And I think it's helpful, because you're right, you should not assume. It's very embarrassing, right? If you've ever asked a big lady when the baby's due and she's not
just
pregnant,
gonna say that.
like,
Yep.
you know, we've all made a faux pas before, and it's
Or
just
if you've
best,
been
it's
asked
embarrassing.
Yes.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. So none of us want to be in that situation. And just with humility, entering that space. I know a lot of parents of trans kids that are at home every day, you know, working on the pronouns, trying to get it right. And I think our kids have grace, you know, for us trying, and for being respectful. And, as it's been said, it's just about the respect. We're going to make mistakes sometimes, but if you get corrected, accept it, own it, work on it, just keep trying to do better.
And the hope is, that, change can happen. Like, this is the hopeful part. People used to smoke in restaurants, okay? And now that seems like a million years ago. So hopefully, and now, like you said, you do see the pronouns on the Zoom window or, in people's emails. So, and I know for us in the DIG community at the Y, we talk about, when you do inclusion stuff, we would talk about doing the work, right? You got to do the work. Either educating yourself or informing your behavior. And as far as I'm concerned, personally, I feel like doing the work is learning to care about people and how they want to be treated or addressed or your behavior on it. So I don't think of that as work. I think of that as enriching my life by making other people feel good. So hopefully that work label becomes a little less cumbersome or laborious. So we started just a moment ago to talk about the trans community, and I know there's a lot of conversation to have in that arena because there has been so much going on. So just to scratch the surface, because I know there have been it's been stigmatized and misunderstood, either in the media or in the community in general. How do we help foster acceptance and understanding for the trans community? What do we need to understand better in that arena, and how can we be better allies to trans members of our community? I want to put you on the spot, Santiago, but I think this is an alley-oop for you.
The first thing that's coming to my mind is an article I just recently wrote for Between the Lines. The whole controversy was basically about an all-male campground that was banning trans men. And I spoke in one of the articles, and I wrote my own article on it. And I think the biggest thing was that a lot of times, and I mentioned this earlier, that within the queer, the LGBTQ plus AI community, is the trans people often get outcast. We get overlooked. We get kind of just thrown into this whole other spectrum of people. And a lot of times I feel like I can speak for myself and some others that we feel like we don't even belong within the LGBT community, because the fight for some are sexuality, whereas the fight for us is a lot of different things, our identity, pronouns, medical help, and insurance coverages and stuff like that. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of going on a rant here. It reminded me of the main question because
I just opened the topic generally.
Yeah, so
anything you have to say.
Right. I guess going kind of circle back around is, when I wrote that article, I really just wanted people to just hear me. And this goes back to a couple questions you asked about what can we do as a community? Just have a platform. Someone said that you may not have the means or the resources to help promote education, but sometimes you just have a platform like what you're doing now. Allow people just to speak from their own experiences. And I think that helps bring connections. It helps bring understanding and being personable with people. And, after I wrote that article, whether or not they changed their minds or opened their minds, I do think it got some light for some people who just didn't understand. I always say to people that you can't know something that you didn't even know existed in the first place. So I think it's just up to, me or other people in the communities. Not everyone likes to speak on it. They prefer to be stealth, which is fine. And I think that's why some people do step up and speak on it. And if, let's say, you're not trans and you know someone who is that doesn't want to speak about it, hey, what can I help tell your story? What can I do to speak for you, but that doesn't overlook and silence your story? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Honestly, I could talk about that all day long. So
I know.
I'm trying to be very short with it.
Well, I knew we would have a window for the topic, and I definitely wanted to give you an opportunity. See, I wanted to do exactly what you were saying to do. Yes. Does anybody else want to chime in on how to be better allies for the trans community?
Well, I just would say that also, at Affirmations, we have many trans groups. We have trans representation on our board of directors, our staff, our programming. I think we're stronger together. To Santiago's point, I understand that there is a frustration out there with the LGBTQAI plus alphabet that continues to grow. I personally, and I am speaking for myself, like the word queer. I know a lot of younger people do as well. If you are not straight cis, then you are part of the queer family. And I think we're stronger together. And I think more simple language could help us politically, especially. I always have my public policy hat on, but the older generation, especially our seniors, that word is still very hurtful and harmful. It was for us too, and smear the queer on the playgrounds of our youth, and I could go on. But I like that we're taking that word back, and that it represents all of us that are not cis or straight, and that we can do more together than we ever could as any one separate letter. So I guess that's what I would say.
Is it hard uniting the diverse populations within the community?
Yep.
Yeah. Great answer.
It is, but it's worth it, and it's necessary.
It is difficult, and I want to add on to what David said, is that we are stronger together, and I think a lot of times we need to put away our differences and understand the bigger picture of what we're all fighting for here, and that's what's going to help keep us together.
Yeah, Adrienne.
Yeah, I just want to add on that, you mentioned the public policy, Dave, and I think, again, this being a very heightened year of anti-trans bills, a lot of them targeting kids who want to play sports. I was fortunate to attend a Pride panel last week about transgender issues, and the sports was a really big part of it. And, I'll share what I learned from it, which was thinking about how important sports are for kids in general. The exercise, the leadership skills, making friends, and why kids play sports, why any kid plays a sport. And the idea of excluding trans kids who are at such a higher risk of perhaps not having the friends, not having the social emotional health, or getting the exercise for so many reasons. It's really important to keep trans kids in sports and playing, what they want to play. So what we can do is pay attention to these bills and what's coming across in our state and in our communities. Get on the phone, write to your senators, your policymakers, try to get active in that space and use your vote and be really, really wise and intentional as a voter and as a constituent in your community, because there is an attack on trans kids right now. Also, I would just suggest look at data and some of the anti-trans theories that are out there, come from a place of ignorance and fear, not data. There is not data to support that trans people are dangerous in any shape or form. So that's a huge myth that unfortunately is leading to a lot of problems and issues. More so, I think the more that trans people are getting awareness and we're talking about the issues, it's creating some backlash. And it's sad, and that's sort of the place we're in. So as it's Pride season and we're celebrating, I just want to make sure that we're still thinking about what's at stake today, because there's still a lot going on that we need to support.
Not to mention an epidemic of trans violence, especially against trans women of color here in the city of Detroit and across the entire country, that often only gets published or talked about in between the lines or gay LGBTQ media, while there is an epidemic of murder and violence against this segment of the community. So that's important. This trans sports thing, it's like the new boogeyman. First they had some burly guy dressed up as in a wig following a little girl into a bathroom to scare everybody, and now this is the new scare tactic. So just know when I smell it. Most people can smell a scare tactic a mile away, and that's what this is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Would just also recommend that there's a great documentary on Netflix called Disclosure, and it does a great look at media and how trans people and non-binary people have been represented very poorly in content that many of us grew up with. And you know, we're fortunately getting in a better space of interrogating our biases and learning how to look inward and like, why do I, you know, why am I uncomfortable with something, or where is this assumption coming from? That documentary does some of that work for us, I think, and puts it out there. As you said, Dave, that this boogeyman mentality is not placed in truth, but rather some biases, I think.
Yeah, I saw that documentary as well, and I would also recommend it as far as eye-opening to what we grew up with, like you said. Glenette, I know you probably have the same experience as me, but in regards to the why, I know, I don't know how Ann Arbor was, but I know I was very pleasantly surprised, probably 4 to 5 years ago, when it was already being addressed within our Ys as far as trans acceptance within the branches and bathroom usage and those kinds of things at, you know, the executive meeting or whatever they would say, this is our policy, make sure that everybody at the branches knows that.
The universal bathroom issue is always a discussion.
Yeah.
And to me, like, how, you know, you have to try to explain it to members. And to me, it's more of a privacy thing. It's not really even a gender thing. Because even like a woman who's had a mastectomy can use like our universal bathroom. It's just a matter of, of privacy.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you had fathers, you know, worried about, oh, you mean to tell me a guy can go into the bathroom with my daughter? And I mean, but first, like our locker rooms, you know, they're separated by adults and kids. And then, you know, you're really worried about a predator. You're not worried about somebody from the LGBTQ community, you know. So if, you know, when I have to talk to somebody about that, that's what I'm saying. Like, the universal bathroom is about privacy. And, you know, if you're worried about, you know, a guy going in the bathroom with the kids, like that's a predator issue. And the Y has, you know, protocols for that too. You know, our new members their background check is ran through. And so, you know, just being able to talk to the members and let them know, you know.
Well, and the unfortunate thing, yeah, that's I think more of the standard Y experience with that, and having to, you do have to do some education of members as far as where we're coming from on it, why we're doing this for members to feel comfortable. But the unfortunate thing too is, you know, in that boogeyman example, there's plenty of folks out there who think that the predator and, you know, the LGBT person are the same thing, you know.
And it's not.
And it's obviously not. But there's that thing of, you know, we can't let people near our children, right? And it's just a gross situation that we don't, you know, play into. And at the Y, everyone is welcome. We don't stigmatize like that. So it made me proud to be with this organization because it, you know, for all is in our mission statement, and it's a good time we're living up to that. So I was really happy. If you can believe it, we are closing in on some of our last minutes together. One of the things I really wanted to make sure of, because everybody here seems to be connected with organizations and causes within this topic, that we signal boost, because part of the work we do at the Y is to partner with other community organizations to be able to collectively have a stronger impact. So I wanted to give everybody a chance to shout out organizations that are doing great work in this arena, ones that they admire, that people should support. So does anybody want to talk about organizations? I know Dave's got one, you know, though.
I mean, obviously, I work at Affirmations. We're the largest LGBTQ community center, but I want to shout out to the Ruth Ellis Center and Trans Color and Transcend the Binary and Stand with Trans. And there are so many, we have a community centers network now of the 10 community centers across the state of Michigan, and we meet every other month to discuss issues. And so there are many LGBTQ organizations across the state, and especially in this region. The Jim Toy Center in Ann Arbor still exists. They lost their space, but they're looking for new space now. Their board of directors still exists there. And then of course the universities have the Spectrum Center and other LGBTQ affirming spaces on the university campuses. So there are many. Affirmations is one of many, and we're, like Santiago and I were just saying, we're stronger together. That's why we created that community centers network, because there's more we can do as the 10 community centers than any one of us could do alone. Much less, we've been getting a lot of threats lately. So the FBI came to that group to do active shooter drills for all of us at those community centers. That's just one example of something we have to deal with, but we're able to deal with and communicate better amongst each other because we have a network.
Thank you. Who else wants to share people they think that are doing great work or should get more signal boost?
Yeah, you said so many great ones, Dave. I was going to suggest a Stand with Trans as well. That's a place I often refer people to get great support for trans issues for their kids. My group, Pride and Joy in Novi, meets. We have registration available for each meeting through Zoom currently through the Novi Public Library's website. So if you're ever interested in joining our group, you're more than welcome to. We're on a little summer hiatus right now, but we'll be posting information for a fall kickoff pretty soon. Free Mom Hugs is another great organization that I'm involved in as well, attending events and being available as a supportive parent to so many who unfortunately don't have that. So I definitely recommend Free Mom Hugs. PFLAG's a great place to get educated. The Trevor Project is doing great things, and they have a lot of resources on their website for people from the faith community who are looking to get educated. I would definitely recommend the Reformation Project and Q Christian Fellowship, both great organizations, affirming, and lots of resources.
Fantastic, thank you. Wow, there's the idea of Free Mom Hugs had me all choked up.
Margaret, I just wanted to add that there is a facility called the Corktown Health Center that specializes in LGBTQ healthcare needs. So
oh, great.
I would just give them a shout out.
Presumably in Corktown?
It's in Detroit, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you for sharing that. That's great. That's great to know about. Anyone else? Well, yeah, go ahead, Glenna.
I was just gonna point out on YUSA Link, the LGBTQ plus resource network. I mean, they offer so much. So like if you're a staff, unfortunately it's just for staff though, like I would follow them because they have like a ton of resources for Pride Month and how you can start moving towards more diversity, so I mean, there was a glossary in there with different terms that I looked in. There was signage, posters. I mean, just so much information for employees if they're moving to, try to make their YMCA a more diverse one.
Fantastic. We have just a few minutes left. Does I want to finish on a happy, hopeful note. So what's our hope? Tell me what this change looks like for you if everything goes the way we hope. What do you hope for?
People ask me all the time about the gay agenda, and I just keep telling them that, I can sum it up with one word, and that's equality. All we want are the same equal rights and protections as the straight community. That's what I hope for. That's what we're all fighting for. And I think we're going to get there.
I think so too. Fantastic. Anyone else want to share their hopes?
I'm hoping to create a space where people feel supported at the job. Because I can say for me, like going into my job and seeing like my boss with her natural hair and all that kind of stuff, like just seeing that and feeling supported, like you thrive. Like, I mean, just knowing that the organization you work for, supports you and all of that. So I think it will be the same for the LGBT community. If we support them, celebrate them, our staff will grow and thrive, and that's my hope.
That's a great one.
Yeah, I'll just add, to add from what Glenette just said, it's that diversity and inclusion isn't a buzzword, right? This isn't just checking the box on company culture. This is really what people need to really get into details with. Like Glenette said, read different literature, become involved, and you will see your employees or your community that you're involved in grow as a result of that, because they'll just feel included and not excluded or need to hide. And so that's what my hope is that diversity and inclusion really starts to just, again, be part of the daily culture, not just the buzzword.
What an awesome point. Yes, I completely agree with you. I want people to learn to change their shoes, i.e. put on the shoes of the other people and feel what they feel before they decide how to treat other people. Yeah, Santiago.
I just want to say that I hope for understanding. One thing my mom said to me in the very beginning of my transition, I'll never forget. She said, I may not understand you and what you're going through, but I understand you're happy, and that's all I need to understand.
Oh.
And I think that's something that we need to realize, that we're not always going to understand another person and everything they're going through. But if we can understand that it's what's making them comfortable and happy, then that's all we need. So I just hope that people let their walls down enough to try to understand people.
That's amazing. Yes, thank you for that. Go ahead, Adrienne.
What I hope for is that our kids don't have to come out in the future, that there's just a more inclusive understanding in a home, that there's not an assumption that your child is one thing or another, that people can grow up being who they are and loving what they love. And as a parent, nothing would make me happier.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. We have some links that everyone shared with some of the resources we talked about today, and those were in the chat. If you are watching us not live, they will be in the description of the events. And I'm really excited to see that we did have some comments along the way that people were grateful for this conversation. So thank you to everyone who tuned in live. I hope that the panel had as great a time as I did, because I'm really thankful for all of you for your time, your insight, your wonderful comments, and this opportunity to celebrate Pride and to encourage allyship in the community. So thank you to you all. And thank you to the DIG committee from the YMCA. Thank you to Helene for joining us and also for encouraging this kind of work and these kinds of conversation. And thanks to the YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit for giving us this platform to talk to everyone today. Thanks again, you guys. This was fantastic.
Thank you.
Friends. Thank you, friends.
Friends.
For
Thank you.
And have a great rest of your day.